Mukherjee. Till even a decade ago, India was this vast market of millions of small businesses which were selling offline, person to person. It's only in the last few years that many of these small businesses, often belonging to the hinterland, have actually tasted the power of digital. And the platform which has enabled many of them, lakhs of them, to go online and taste the experience of selling online is a platform called Meesho, which has been very successful over the last few years and gone on to become a unicorn in its own right. So much so that even some of the larger online players, the largest online players, are now targeting this space. So I'm very pleased to welcome on the show today Vidit Aatrey, who's the founder and CEO of India's #1 social commerce platform, so to speak, Meesho. But Vidit, thank you very much for joining me today, and it's a pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Super excited to come here and share more about Meesho.
So, I described you as India's #1 social commerce platform, but that may not be strictly accurate because when you started, you used the power of social media to get all these small businesses to transact or to come online. But over the years, Meesho has evolved as a business. So maybe you could start off by telling our viewers who are not so conversant with your platform, what Meesho does, what it is essentially, and the kind of business model that you operate with.
Yeah, sure. So Meesho started back in 2015, and we started with a very simple goal, right? Our goal was, how do we bring the small business economy in the country online? Because back in 2015, e-commerce in some form had been there in India, but we could not find a single small business around us in Bangalore that was selling online. So we started with a very simple goal. Can we enable all of the small businesses that we see around us become successful online? And that's when we started Meesho. Like Meesho means Meri shop put together, because we wanted to give a shop of their own to each and every small business in India. So back then, when we tried to kind of bring these small businesses online, we realized a lot of these consumers who buy from small businesses offline were still primarily offline. They were not buying online directly, yet still, because of multiple reasons. Some of these consumers did not trust online platforms still. Some of these consumers were not tech savvy enough, and they were not using many apps. They were just using like WhatsApp or Facebook at best. So we said, why not take commerce to them where they were on WhatsApp? So our first model was the model built on WhatsApp, built on Facebook and other social platforms, where consumers will buy from entrepreneurs, Meesho entrepreneurs on the platform. And that's how we started. But what has happened over the last 2 years is we have seen, because of the pandemic, because of data being easily available, because of things like Geo, a lot of consumers now have come online and now are comfortable buying directly from e-commerce platforms like ours. So over the last 2 years, now we have gone directly to consumers. Now consumers come to the Meesho app and they buy things that they like across all possible categories. We are a horizontal platform where you can connect with small businesses across all categories such as fashion, lifestyle, beauty, home and kitchen, electronics, anything and everything else that you want to buy, you can come and buy. All of these products are available from small businesses across. 80% of our businesses directly consumers coming and buying from the Meesho platform, and about 20% is via platforms where they're still buying from Meesho entrepreneurs, because these consumers are still learning how to be comfortable.
So Vidit, give me a sense of the profile of the customer that you interact with. When you say that you've enabled lakhs of small businesses, typically which kind of towns and cities do they come from? And what kind of entrepreneurs are these? Are these generally more women than men? And what do they sell? I mean, you said that most of the business earlier was mobile phones and electronics. But now the obvious one is fashion. Other than fashion, what are the key categories that these vendors sell on your platform?
Yeah, first of all, on the category bit, we've always focused on the unorganized categories. So we have never sold smartphones. We have never sold white goods. What I was talking about was, before we started, Indian e-commerce was all branded, was all about smartphones and white goods and branded fashion. Now, in our case, what's the kind of profile of our small businesses? So our small businesses are small manufacturers, people who run very small workshops and make these products with hand, have very small machines built in. And they are, by the way, based across the country, right? So like the winter wear from Ludhiana, the sarees from Surat, the home and kitchen products from Rajkot, the footwear from Agra. So all of these small business towns that are focused on certain categories, we have these small businesses from everywhere. Like people who make those specialized cotton sarees in Kashipur in West Bengal or in Banaras, the kind of Banarsi sarees that are popular across the country. So we have these small businesses and weavers and artisans from everywhere. And these are the folks who are coming and listing these products and selling. Apart from this, we also have these women entrepreneurs who set up these shops on social platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook. And 80% of these entrepreneurs who are doing this business on WhatsApp are women. And these women started their business for the first time because of Meesho. They could not do it offline because they never had access to capital, but they were able to do it primarily online because of a platform. And majority of them are homemakers in the age bracket of 25 to 45. They really want to do something of their own, get a professional identity of their own while being close to their family, right? So they're able to run this business while staying at home, which is a great thing for them. And that's why we saw millions of them sign up on our platform to become entrepreneurs, and so many of them are successful.
So when you started in 2015, I mean, there was a lot of low-hanging fruit because, as you said, that there was hardly any online presence for many of these businesses. But over the last 4 or 5 years, 5-7 years, you've actually tapped many lakh or many millions of these small businesses who are already on the online platform now. So my question is, what level of penetration have you already reached? Or are you approaching some kind of saturation level with the penetration that you've successfully managed over the last 5 years?
I would say we're just getting started. So if you look at the total number of small businesses in India across all categories, about 60 to 70 million. If you look at on our platform today, we have close to 500,000 of these small businesses, all the kinds I talked about, like from Surat and from very small towns across the country. So we still have got a very, very small percentage of the small business economy online. And I think we're just getting started because if you look at the remaining 50, 60 million small businesses, these are businesses that get even smaller. And that's why the kind of problems they face, which is their know-how in terms of how to get started online, the kind of categories they operate in are much lower ticket sizes for which supply chains online still haven't worked. So I'm saying we're just getting started, and the kind of problems we need to solve to get the remaining of small business in India are harder and very different from what we've solved so far. So I think in terms of saturation, we are decades away from there, right? Because this is such a large problem to solve across the country. I'm talking about $1 trillion of retail sales happening across the country. So it's not going to happen in 5 years and 10 years. It's going to take decades. And we're just getting started here.
So you say growth is not an issue for you. I mean, has there been any kind of slowing down? You know, the last couple of years would have been explosive because of the COVID problem. But as COVID wanes away, do you see some of this online frenzy actually tapering off? Because, you know, for the first time, Amazon reported a loss recently, and that sort of rang the alarm bells globally on whether online is saturating. You don't see growth as a problem, or customer addition or client addition as a problem at Meesho?
Yeah, I don't think so, by the way. And I talk about the entire e-commerce market in India. And the reason I say it is for a very simple reason. Today, this is 2022, and all of us know e-commerce has been there for quite some time. Pandemic happened, which was a big tailwind. Even after all of that, only 6% of entire retail in India has gone online. And by the way, if you look at that number for China, that number is north of 35, 40%. You look that number for US, that number is again 25, 30, 35%. So India's e-commerce penetration is still very, very small as compared to all the other markets. So that's why you saw this number for Amazon. Like globally, most of it was like US sales or European sales. There, the penetration is so high that you can still see some of this. And by the way, even then, these companies are very fast growing. They're growing at like 30, 40% year on year. India is still such a small base that all of the growth for e-commerce lies ahead of us. So I would say, I don't think for like many years, we're going to talk about this because India's share of e-commerce still very, very small. Like if you look at China, China is very similar population to us in India. China does north of $1.5 to $2 trillion of sales online. In India, that number is less than $50 billion, a very small percentage. So I think we're just getting started as an economy, and that formalization is happening. Obviously, Geo was a big boon for all of us because so many consumers came online. Pandemic was a big push. That has obviously pushed it forward, but the base is still very small and we're still very far away from getting towards saturation or penetration being very high.
So what kind of growth rates do you have at Meesho, Vidit? I mean, can you tell us how fast you're growing, both in terms of client acquisition or in terms of top line? Some metric of just to benchmark how fast you may be growing.
Yeah, sure. So like last year, if I just talk about the last 12 months on a very sizable base, right? Like we're already quite large. We grew 5x in a single year, right? Which does not happen very often for a late stage company. It happens when we are in early stages. So we grew 5x in a single year. In the last 12 months, 100 million people, which means 10 crore Indians have bought from us. Number of people who have come and like spend time on our app is much, much higher. But just in the last 12 months, 100 million people have bought from us. That is 20% of all the people who are online. There are about 500 million people in India who are online, out of which 100 million people bought from Meesho just in the last 12 months. So we've grown very, very fast, and we continue to grow very fast even at such a large base because of the very low penetration number that I was talking about.
Time for a quick break, but we shall return with our conversation with Vidit Aatrey, founder and CEO of Meesho, after this very short break.
While instances of drone mishaps are plenty, India is pushing hard to put drones in mainstream use, especially to execute deliveries. A Delhi-based drone startup is offering its services to a healthcare company. They're carrying out trials for delivering essential medicines and critical lab samples in Kerala. First, the medicine and diagnostic sample is loaded in a temperature-controlled payload box, and then the payload box is loaded onto the drone. These drone trials were beyond the visual line of sight, directed by drone pilots from a command center. The drone traveled a distance of 30 kilometers through a predetermined route. Similar to helipads, these drones also have their takeoff and drop-off pads. In another instance, a Bengaluru-based delivery firm is also dabbling with drones on a trial basis to make grocery deliveries. The company has roped in 4 drone-as-a-service operators for these trials, which will be conducted in 2 phases. A Gurgaon-based drone startup may have laid the ground for postal drone deliveries, as it successfully delivered a parcel in the Kutch region in Gujarat. It was a pilot project in collaboration with India Post. The drone flight traveled a distance of 46 kilometers in less than 30 minutes. The delivery was estimated to be 5 times faster than the speed of surface transportation. This drone delivery was among the longest single delivery flights made by a drone in the country.
Welcome back. You're watching the Business Today show. I've been in conversation with Vidit Aatrey, founder and CEO of social commerce company Meesho. How do you make money with it? I mean, because your model seems to be different. While some online players rely on a commission model, you apparently rely on an advertising model. Can you just take us through how you make money and whether the chances of you becoming profitable soon are high, or you can give us a sense of the runway towards profitability?
Sure. And I think before I explain how does it work, let me explain why do we do this? Like, why not take the easy way of charging commission like everyone else did before us? So I think one way to understand this is small businesses tend to have lower margins as compared to larger brands, right? And before us, before Meesho, one big reason why small businesses did not become successful online was they did not have enough margin to pay commissions to online platforms. And hence they just could never come online. It was a big barrier of entry, just kept stopping all these small businesses to come online. So we said if we really want to bring the entire small business economy in India, I don't think we can charge commission. I don't think we can stop these small businesses and say, okay, hey, if you don't have this much margin, you can't come online. So that was the big reason. We said we will never charge commission. So we are a zero commission platform. In India, no one before us kind of ever did it. Like we pioneered this model because we really wanted to make these small businesses successful and lower down the barriers. Now coming to how do we do it? Like if not commission, is advertising enough? So if you look at, by the way, globally, some of the most profitable e-commerce platforms are platforms that are solely monetizing or mostly monetizing from advertising. You look at players like Alibaba. Like last year, if you look at Amazon made like $30 billion plus of advertising revenue, and that was most of their bottom line. They did not make money otherwise. And that's true for like platforms elsewhere. You look Mercado Libre in Latin America, Pinduoduo in China, apart from Alibaba. So you see some of the most profitable e-commerce platforms globally tend to make money from advertising. And the reason is very simple, right? Like once you get these small businesses to come online and taste success for the first time, then they're hungry. They want to grow more. They want to invest in advertising so they get more customers, more traffic. And that's how we monetize. Today, we have built some of the simplest tools for these small businesses to come and put a budget, bid, and essentially grow their sales on the platform. And we started this about 12 months ago, and we've been able to scale it very, very fast. And it's much more profitable, and it is aligned with the goals that they have. They don't have to pay any commission, and if they make an extra amount of money, they're willing to come back on the platform, invest, and grow. So that's how we monetize. And by looking at all the models that I talked about globally, we are very, very sure that advertising is a very large revenue pool, more than enough for us to get profitable. And over time, by the way, we'll keep adding more and more seller services. This was the first seller service we added, which we monetize, which is advertising. Over time, if you look at some of these small businesses really struggle with access to financial services. Either they don't get loans or they get it at very, very high cost of capital. Can we solve it for them? Because we see all of their sales happening through our platform. We are rightly positioned to solve some of these problems. So we'll keep adding all of the other seller services over time, help these small businesses become more successful, as well as monetize more and more of our platform. But do it in a way which is not creating barriers of entry for the small businesses on our platform.
So by when do you think you'll be profitable with it?
I think a good way to understand this is, it's like companies go through these stages, right? Like when you say, hey, we are going to grow and make sure that we are able to reach more and more people, especially the last 2 years, we've been focused on getting to like more and more people. As I was saying, we've grown so fast. We had 100 million people transacting with us last year. Now, over the next few years, I think one of our big focus areas is like, how do we now start to kind of scale our revenues? And if you just talk about profitability, I would say just in the next 1 to 2 years, we would be cash flow positive, which means we would be adding more and more money in the bank. We've always been unit economics positive, which means since we started the company back in 2015 to today, every single month, we made some money per order. Like we never ever lost money, which is the case with a lot of other companies. So because we always had positive unit economics, it's just a matter of choice for us to trade between growth and profitability. If we don't want to invest so much in growth, we can really get close to profitability, which can happen just the next 1 to 2 years. A lot of things that we're doing right now, which is scaling revenue, etc., in that direction, we're very confident we can get there in the next 12 to 24 months.
Now, I ask this question because there is a little bit of a valuation tussle going on in the digital world now. I mean, you would have seen how much valuations have collapsed in the public market for many of your digital peers, which has raised fears that maybe the private equity capital that companies like yours were raising to fund growth might not be so readily available or not readily available at the kind of prices that you were raising. Do you see that as a concern area at all?
I think that question is valid. like if you look at globally, just the last 2 years, especially after the pandemic happened, what mostly globally investors rewarded public markets, private markets was growth, right? Like everywhere. Now, what has happened because of inflation in US, because of the geopolitical things that are happening in Europe, is suddenly a lot of expectations from investors are now moved away from growth, but towards more profitability and earnings and everything, right? So a lot of companies that just focused on growth because that's what the market rewarded the last 2 years now have to shift gears. And if you ask me, some companies would be able to do it and some companies won't be able to do it because like if your fundamentals are right, you can really change your gear and move towards profitability sooner. If not, then you can struggle with it. So I think that question is valid. Like how many companies would be able to change that gear, get closer towards profitability? Some of them would be able to and some of them would be not. So I would say that question is valid, but I still believe some of the best quality businesses, like irrespective of whether you are in 2020, 2021 when investors want growth or 2022 when investors want profitability, they build their businesses right. And those businesses would be able to like transition really well and manage these waters. Well, some of the others will definitely struggle.
So if I heard you correctly, you said in the next 12 to 24 months, you will make a thrust towards becoming profitable. Is that the kind of timeline you have in mind for going public as well? Maybe an IPO in India? Or is there another model like the SPAC model, which you might be considering to list overseas? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So to be very frank, I don't think we have thought very, very clearly about where will we go public and how will we go public. Like we go public by SPAC and so on. I don't think we have made that choice yet. I think we will do it closer to that particular milestone. I think a good way to understand is in 12 months and 24 months, as I was saying, we would be ready to go IPO because of all the things we're doing right now. And after that, then it's just the time. The markets have to be available. Markets have to go public, right? Like timing also matters quite a lot. And after that, whenever we see it's a good time, I think we'll be willing to go public. But I think for us, what matters the most is just being ready for that, and that we should be in the next 12 months. After that, whenever we see the right window, I think we'll move forward and then decide where do we want to go public and how do we want to go public. That should be much easier after that.
Tell us about your friendship with Sanjeev Barnwal, because you guys started the company together. You go back a long way to college. How important is that equation, that partnership in building this brand?
I think it's the foundation of the entire company. And the reason I say that is like Sanjeev and I know each other now for about 14 years. Sanjeev and I were in the same department in college, the same hostel, and the same wing, right? Like his room was like opposite of mine. So the first face you see when you get up in the morning, like that kind of person. So you can imagine how close we were. And we spent all the time like very, very close friends. And back in 15, when both of us connected with each other, and we realized that after spending some time in the industry, both of us really had an itch of doing something of our own. We said, hey, we are still young enough. We want to try some crazy, wacky ideas. If we fail, that's okay, because we have not much to lose. But we really want to try it, and we want to try it together. Because you also have to realize this journey is very tough. Like people take years, like 2 years, 5 years, sometimes even longer before something starts to work. If you start up with people that you don't trust enough, you give up too soon. Like, I don't know if this person knows what they're doing. But because we were so close friends, when we started, we trusted each other. We are also very complementary in our skill set. So he's the software engineer who coded our entire product after everything else, which is the product, the business, the operations. And so we are very complementary in skill set. We trust each other quite a lot. And since we started, like every single time we had a period, like everything is not working out, we will go to each other and raise the other person and basically remind them of why we started what we started. I think partnership is very, very important. And I think it has stayed with us so far. And I tell people, I don't know if I could have gone through this journey myself. If I had started this company all alone, I would have given up on long ago, right? It was a very hard journey to go alone. Our relationship and our partnership is very, very special. And I would say that's the foundation of everything that is Meesho.
It was great talking to you, and I wish you all the best, even greater success in the years ahead.
Thank you so much.
Like all journeys, this one too must come to an end. Mithali Raj bid goodbye to cricket with these words. As one of the greatest careers in cricket history comes to an end, here's a trip down the memory lane. Mithali Raj was born on 3rd December 1982 in Jodhpur, Rajasthan. Her father is Dorai Raj, who was in Indian Air Force, and her mother is Leela Raj. Raj started to play the game at the age of 10. Mithali Raj became the first player from India in both men's and women's to score 2,000 runs in T20 internationals. She became the first woman to complete 20 years in